run to the battle. Put our armor on, draw our swords. Let's run to the battle. Shout loud and glorify the Lord. Let's run to the battle. Put our armor on, draw our swords. Let's run to the battle. Shout loud and glorify the Lord. Come on, run. Let's run. Let's run. Run.
One of the jobs we have to do with our children is to help them learn how to manage electronics. Now, we all need to deal with electronics in our lives, but some children don't have what they need to manage electronics. In fact, I would suggest that most children, by far, do not have the character necessary to manage electronics, and that's why they need parents to step in. When children don't have self-control, they need parental control to guide them. And so I want to give you some suggestions and some ideas about how to deal with electronics in your home. First, let me just say that a healthy use of electronics means that we're going to use it for information, our cell phones, our computers. We're going to get easy access to information. We're going to connect with other people. We may have some entertainment involved in there. Computers, cell phones, tablets can all be helpful in our lives. They become unhealthy when they dictate our lives, when they become the masters, so that some children like to play these games where if you leave the game continues online with others, and then you feel anxious because you feel like you have to get back to the game. Or sometimes children have to get back to their cell phones to see how many likes they have on their posts that they made. When possessiveness starts to take over in a child's life, we call that electronics addiction. And so we have to help our children when they find themselves in that condition. Certainly we can see that when children are 3 and 4 years old. We can see it when they're in elementary age. Certainly 14, 15-year-olds, we see electronics addiction. We see it in adults too, but let's focus on the children for the moment, because all of us, including our children, must learn to manage this, and we're going to help our children to do that more effectively. In order to do that, we want to make sure we're understanding some very important truths that God would help us understand. In the Bible, in 2 Corinthians, Paul is talking about life, and he's saying that all things are permissible, but not everything is beneficial. In other words, what he's saying is, we don't measure something by saying what's wrong with it, because there's a lot of good things in the world, but not everything is something I want to participate in. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33, Paul says this: bad company corrupts good character. And most of us would not allow an evil person to come into our home, but then we allow evil to come into our homes through electronics, and it puts our children in danger. Some parents will say to me, well, my child has to have a cell phone. It's a safety issue. And I go, whoa, wait a minute. I think we better consider some other aspects of safety here, because if you're thinking about safety and your child's accessing these sites, or their heart is being drawn to worldliness, we may have a problem here that we need to address. So we want to help our children address these issues in some very important ways. I think that children often need parental controls. Now, sometimes you can set up these parental controls with your child with the provider of the cell phone. So they have parental controls there. With the provider of the internet access in your home, there are parental controls there that you can use. But children are smart today, and often they'll bypass those in various ways in order to access what they want. And so sometimes you need to use physical parental controls. You need to park your cell phone in my bedroom at 10 o'clock at night. That's where cell phones are going to go, so you're not sleeping with it. See, the danger is that a child often who doesn't have self-control ends up sleeping with their phone, watching videos in the night, disrupting their sleep, or texting with people in the middle of the night. And what we're trying to do is help them manage the cell phone. So one of the things we may do is limit the bedtime for the phone. Another thing we might do is limit the actual hours that they can spend on the phone somehow. So we're going to limit that, maybe physically. Sometimes it means taking the computer or tablets outside of the bedroom, because children who are addicted to electronics spend a lot of time isolating. The real issue here is we're going to set up these boundaries for children, including the content they're able to look at. How are we going to do that? In part, we're going to hold them accountable. Accountability often means that we're going to look at their history, and we're going to look at their access to where they've been, and we're going to look at the text messages. And we want to equip them. Sometimes a young person will find themselves in a group text that they didn't invite themselves into, and then there's pictures being passed around that are inappropriate, and they need to know, how do you deal with those kinds of things? So it's not just our children have this desire to do the wrong thing, it's sometimes they're put in difficult situations as well. Managing electronics is very important in the lives of our children. So we want to help them and equip them to do this. Now, sometimes the parents say, oh, this is so hard. If I stop electronics for my child, we're going to have some real serious problems. Tension increases. We've got anger episodes. Well, that's a sign of electronics addiction. In fact, notice, this is what happens. And sometimes when we have severe problems with addiction, we need a fast from those. And so children will sometimes need to take a break for 3 to 5 weeks. That's a long time to be without your electronics. And the first stage that we see from a child is anger, and we see depression. And so parents feel bad then. They feel like, oh no, I've really created these bad things. But often if we'll allow that to work in a child's life for a bit, it'll work itself out, and we'll see some very valuable things happen. A child becomes more talkative, more responsive, out of their room more, interacting with others, playing with a sibling that they wouldn't do before. All kinds of good things happen in a child's life if we have to go to that extreme in order to have a fast from electronics. It's not a bad thing, but it can be rather challenging for a child at times. Part of what we're recognizing here is that when a child spends a lot of time with electronics, it robs them of other valuable parts of their development. One of the greatest things they say in business today is that we want to hire someone who has creativity, someone who can think outside the box. But creativity is often lost when a child is spending so much time focusing in on electronics, so we're going to help them to be able to deal with those electronics in a powerful way. So creativity, how do we develop that in a child's life? Well, if we shut off the electronics for a bit, the child's going to have to think of ways that they can cure their boredom themselves. What typically happens with a 4-year-old, you take away their tablet for a little while, they want to rely on the parent to be the cruise director for them and to solve all their boredom problems. And so when parents are saying, well, I'd rather give them the iPad, let them have the iPad so he can be busy, and that can be the babysitter. I don't have to entertain this child. You don't have to feel the responsibility to entertain a child who's bored. That child has a brain that God gave them, and boredom is the garden in which creativity grows and develops. I like to say to kids, there's 6 things you can do when you're bored. You might say this with a child, go sit down. I'm going to give you 6 things you can do when you're bored. Now this list I'm going to kind of make up as I go here. You can make it up yourself. I'll give you 6 things. But the list changes whenever I'm sharing it with someone. Here's one. You can build a relationship with someone. Someone's walking by on the street, you can say hi to them. Or you can talk to people inside of our home. You can ask questions and follow-up questions. Those are good things that you can do. You could also, besides relationship, you could learn something. You could learn something from a book. Or you can go take a walk in the backyard, and you could learn something that way, looking at the grass and the fence and all kinds of things. You'll learn all kinds of things by experience instead of just watching a video about it. When you're working with other people, you can serve. That's another thing you could do. If you're bored, you can serve. There's lots of things that could be done around here. You look for something that could be done. Maybe you want to clean out a drawer. You want to clean a room or do something that contributes to the family. That's service. Maybe you want to grow spiritually. Maybe there's something that you want to do in your Bible and study some Bible story or memorize a scripture. Or maybe what you want to do, if you want to choose another thing, is you want to be creative, do an art project of sorts. These are all categories of ideas that a child can learn. I've given you 5. Let me add a 6th one. I always like to leave the sixth one the wild card. I say to kids, the 6th one's the unknown. God has given you a brain, and if you sit down for a little bit and start thinking, you'll think of some grand thing that might not fit into one of these other ideas, categories that I've given you. So we're teaching children to be creative in the midst of their boredom instead of relying on parents or electronics to entertain them. What we're trying to do is give our children the ability to manage their electronics effectively. I find that we need some parenting skills in order to do this. And so we need to focus in on the parent just a little bit here in order to give you what you need in order to manage this. The first thing you need is conviction, not just preference. It's not where we're saying, I prefer you not be on your on your electronics. I have a conviction that that isn't the best thing for you and there's other things to be done. So when you focus on conviction, then conviction will drive you and give you the motivation you need. I think parents also need to be empathetic to children who are struggling in these issues and areas. It's also important for parents to be firm with their children, because sometimes children need that firmness, and then that's going to create some more tension, and parents don't like tension. So I think another thing we need is the ability to be able to manage our emotions and someone else's emotions. We need the ability to hang in there and persevere when things get challenging. What we're doing is we're helping our children in significant ways so that they could grow in this ability to manage electronics. They need to be able to interact with them, but they can't control them. And so we, as we're working with them, are giving them the skills they need to manage this both now and in the future.
Run, run to the battle. Put your armor on, draw your sword. Let's run, run to the battle.